right on time. Respect your time and Dr. Harrison's. Just a couple of announcements before we start. There are sheets of paper around on the tables if you need to take any notes. There are also index cards, so that if you have a burning question, rather than having to run up to a mic, if you'll write that down, at the end we'll have someone go around and pick those up. Just hold it up like this, and Dr. Harrison can try to respond to at least a few of your questions. We are delighted that she's here. Let's see, housekeeping, if anyone needs a restroom, if you go back through that room, the dining area, toward those exit doors, there are 2 restrooms on your left just before you go out the door. The flyers about the March program are out on the table. If you have never signed in, be sure that you do sign in before you leave so that we can keep you posted about the upcoming programs. We've already got a good program, I think, for March, so we look forward to seeing all of you back in March and hoping that all of you will remain active in this whole field for many years to come. I also see that Leslie Mullix is here, halfway back at one of the tables. Hold your hand up. She's going to leave some material on the tables about the effort to have increased numbers of classrooms for pre-K. And if any of you are interested in signing a declaration of support, she'll have those forms as well. I think those are all the announcements. So let me get right to you, Dr. Harrison. We are so glad to have you in our city, first of all, and particularly glad to have you here. I told her that this audience is usually made up of people that are staunch supporters of education and public education in particular, and so very interested in what she's bringing to our county. We know we have a lot of work to do. Many of us have lived here a long time and believe in this community and want to see it thrive and believe that education is the secret to having our community grow and thrive. So when I looked at the newspaper and read the article about you, Dr. Harrison, one of the things that immediately struck me was your comment, if you're having a rough day, go spend a day in a kindergarten classroom. And I agree, because children can reignite and re-inspire us even when we're having a rough day. Also, I read a quote that said, we have found, and this is already in her short time with us, we have found her leadership to be visionary but exacting, in that she is driven in the purpose of improving the district and helping us reach our fullest potential. Amen, amen. She holds everyone accountable to a quality of service that will help us reach our fullest potential. She is data-driven, but also personal, builds relationships, collaborates with everyone to get the work done. I don't believe there's much left out of that quote, so I'm not sure I need to add a lot, but I will give you a little bit more. Dr. Harrison is originally from Danville, Virginia. She has degrees from Averett in Danville. She has a master's from Hampton University and a PhD from Virginia Tech. Her experience is broad and deep. Now, I love this. She's been a teacher in the classroom. She's been a principal. She's been a district superintendent, including being superintendents in DeKalb County School District in Georgia and also in Augusta, Georgia for Richmond County. So I think her experience pretty much covers all the bases of education, and we are delighted to have her to welcome you to our midst. So thank you for being here, Dr. Harrison.
I am delighted to be here. I have a few questions that I was asked to respond to before I started. And what inspired you to enter education? Actually, I wanted to be a teacher from an early age. I either wanted to be an attorney or a teacher. And teacher really was something I had great teachers, great math teachers. I became a mathematics major. But what discouraged me was the teacher saying to me, we don't make any money. And that discouraged me, because as a young child, you want to know that you'll be able to make a little money. And actually, I was narrow-sighted, not very broad in my perspective. And so I did not enter education as soon as I graduated from college. I went to work for health techs, thinking money would be great, and it wasn't. I tutored all through college in mathematics, and so I went to what I love to do, and that was to teach. And we still didn't make any money. But you know, I was able to pay for a car, rent my apartment, get my hair done once every 2 weeks, and eat out on Fridays. So that kind of, that was good enough for me at the time. And I didn't have children, so I didn't have to worry about it. And I was asked a little bit about, you know, what are our priorities in the school system? So I'll start there, okay? So when I entered, first thing you look at is what is the mission and the vision which defines the work of the district. You also want to look at the strategic plan to be sure that it is aligned with what the community feels should happen in the school district. And so we started off looking at our mission, vision statement, and our strategic plan. And I went throughout the community, went all throughout the community, from Tobacconville to Rural Hall, to Kernersville. And what I learned, if you're superintendent and I pop in visit, I don't schedule visits, I pop in, and before I could leave the school, the PTA president was generally there. Now, I'm not sure how that happened. Somebody made a call, but usually the PTA president was there to share his or her insights. And so I'll start there. We knew that our mission, our work here in our county, needed to shift a little bit. So the mission that we are carrying to our district or to our Board of Education reads as follows. The Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools will engage all students in high-quality, relevant learning experiences so they graduate with interpersonal, academic, and workforce skills to compete globally and contribute to our society. We also have the following, and I'll read them in part because I don't want to spend all that time reading each one. But raising student achievement is certainly at the top of our list. But before we raise student achievement, we have to foster a sense of inclusiveness. We've hired a diversity officer. We've done a lot of work past our first equity and diversity officer. Passed our first equity policy last month. The Board of Education approved our equity policy. I think that's hooray for our community, to be honest with you. We have a desire to recruit and retain high quality teachers. One of our goals is around building partnerships and better communication. And the next one is equitable access. Equitable access is important. So these things must happen in unison before we can really see what we desire to see for students. After 10 listening sessions, and I mentioned from Tobacconville to Kernersville to Clemens to Winston-Salem to Rural Hall to Bethania, what I realized and what was surprising to me was the uniqueness about every community. In a lot of communities this large, there are common themes, there's common relevant conversations, they're unified by a common purpose. There's something going on in the community to bring it together. For example, I left Augusta. Cybersecurity unified us around what was happening for Gordon. But what's interesting to me and what's a surprise to me, it was a question I was asked to answer, was the uniqueness of each community. And each community has a desire for something that's a little different than the brother or sister next door, which makes it a challenge when you're running a school district because you really have to attend to the needs of individual communities. What I love about this community is access to sports and the appreciation and access to the arts. That appreciation, I think, is under-communicated. I mean, the access, the appreciation, even with our children, I don't think they realize what a unique opportunity they have and what a great community we have. And we have lots of people across our community, whether they're parents or non-parents, who really value public education. So those were the things I think I hope I answered those questions. But moving forward, I want to speak to you today a little bit about where we go from here and some of the challenges that exist and how we should move in the school district. There's work that's immediate here in our school district, and we have to have a sense of urgency when we think about educating our youth. I've heard a lot of conversation around equity. I hear equal, and I hear equitable. And we have to be clear on what this work entails. People confuse the two. Sometimes people, when I go to certain communities, that we want equal. Some, we want equitable. So for purposes of this conversation today, I want to let you know that equal does imply that we all get the same. It's equal. We all get the same amount of support. We all have the same dollars. We all have the same access. It's equal. Equity implies that we get what we need to reach a specified level, in this case of education. We reach equity when in education, when personal and social circumstances such as gender, ethnic origin, or family background are not obstacles to achieving your educational potential. And that's when we have equity. And that's not always equal. And sometimes people get confused by the two terms. So what does that look like? That looks like access to gifted is across the board, but getting access to gifted may require some different points of support. That means access to advanced placement courses in high school might require a different level of support for certain children, no matter where they live. Maybe it's moving the courses closer to home. Maybe it's providing extra tutorial sessions. It's not changing the outcome. It's changing what requires the input that is required to have children meet the same outcome. It's access to a high-quality teacher in every classroom. We want high-quality teachers in every classroom. It doesn't matter if you're at Kernersville Middle, East Forsyth, if you're at Parkland, if you're at Kimberly Park, if you're at Clemens. We have a situation where we have children, only 7% of the children at Kimberly Park read on grade level after third grade. 7%. But I also have schools with 86% of the children reading after third grade. What has to happen is we have to provide the right level of support for children to have access to teachers, quality instruction, and things that help them reach that potential. The goal is not to take our children who are reading at 86% and bring them down. We need to support those children as well, praise them, and move forward. Access to a great leader. Everything rises and falls on leadership. People tend not to rise above leadership. And so a great principal in every school is necessary. Access to project-based learning, access to STEM, access to the arts. The arts are so important to our children, and we cannot substitute and expand core academics and leave out the arts. They mean so much to everyone. So it is not within our reach to solve every problem, but it is within our reach to at least make a difference with our children. So one of the biggest challenges to overcoming some of these, I would call them lack of, or challenges around access, has to do with our own behavior. Has to do with our own behavior. A belief that children will rise to certain levels. One of the challenges I have with our community, any community, is oftentimes we sit on our hands when it comes to really talking about from whence we come. When I visit communities, when I talk to people, I like to listen to people talk about themselves. And oftentimes what you'll find is that they've experienced challenges themselves. You've come from a place of difficulty, you've been able to rise and overcome challenges, and you've been able to make a way. And if not you, then someone in your family has been able to do so. My children often say, Mama, we were raised so hard. It was so hard coming along. I said, are you kidding me? You had your own bedroom, you had a car at 16, you had any shoes you wanted. I did expect a lot from them. Are y'all kidding me? You had food in the refrigerator. You didn't have to eat a banana and mayonnaise sandwich until Friday, until Mama got paid. You know, all of these kinds of things. And they're looking at me like, did you? Yes. And so oftentimes, I think telling our story helps children and communities understand you're there, but you weren't always there. And so I challenge us, if you've been in situations where you've had to overcome, where you've been in the military, where you've come from homes of challenges, whether it be a person who's come from a home of little means, or come from a home that had some abusive behavior, or you know people, tell your story to children. Because children who are experiencing challenges are inspired by the fact there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not always a train. Tell your story to children. We hide from poverty. We hide from mental illness. We don't talk about it. I can remember when I moved to Augusta, I lived in an apartment for 2 years. As I figured out, the first 2 years of superintendency, you're running so much, you barely have time to find somewhere to live. So I landed in this loft. They'd taken an old mill and renovated it to a loft. And one morning as I rose, I usually go to work super early, so I missed a lot of this. But one morning I didn't go to work till 7:30. I looked out my window, peered out, and I said, oh my gosh, what is that school bus doing stopping at the Salvation Army? I thought, there must be an employee there placing the child on the bus to go to school. That's just what my thinking was. And here I am, superintendent of the school system. And so as I went to work, I called my transportation director, Mr. Abbott, we've got a bus that stops at the Salvation Army. Picked up a lot of kids. Do we have employees over there? He said, no ma'am. Those are our students. They live in those modulars behind the Salvation Army at night. They have to be out by 7:30, and at 8 o'clock, the Salvation Army closes down until 5. He said that's why the children are upset, because oftentimes when they open at 5, it's first come, first served basis. So if the buses are late getting to the Salvation Army because middle schools don't close till 4:30, they miss their bed. So a late bus to a child living in the Salvation Army has a whole different meaning than somebody who wants to get home and look at SpongeBob SquarePants. Whole different meaning. And so as we think about these areas, sometimes it's hard to ignore, because as I moved away from that loft, I moved into a home, and I swear to goodness, the only time I ever went by the Salvation Army on the way home was because I just wanted to. I didn't have to, because my route home didn't take me by there. So unless I was very intentional, I didn't see that level of poverty. I didn't see homelessness. I didn't see that because that was not in my faith. And also, we have to mentor our children. You know, my mother was a PTA. I thought she was the president. She recently said, Angie, I was the secretary. I thought, well, you acted like the president. So I thought you were the president. She said, no, I'm the secretary. I said, okay, I'm clear on that now. She's 77, bless her heart. But she said, no, she remembered being the secretary. She remembered that. But the reality is my mother always kept sandwich meat. And you know, if you're from my neighborhood, you know Kool-Aid and the importance of Kool-Aid in the neighborhood. She always maintained a relationship because she knew that children in our neighborhood did not always have access. And so my mother was the point of contact, you know, and we sold Girl Scout cookies back then. For those of you who have them in your car, we sold them back then. We did. I was a Girl Scout. And we also are oftentimes afraid to cross over and extend ourselves to other communities. Out of fear, really out of fear. And so as we meet the challenges that we have in our district, some of these areas we must overcome. I was participating in a study out of Emory University, and some of the things I learned about poverty, generational poverty versus situational poverty. Situational, I lose my job, I'm situationally impoverished. my kids, one of them might mean, well, I'm in poverty because I had to live in your basement for 3 months. You know, it's different levels of poverty. But really, when you look at generational poverty, what you realize is that you realize there's generation after generation after generation of limited education. But not only limited education, but a value for what education can do for one. There's also limited employment opportunities. You see, you heard I grew up in Danville. So I went to Dan River High School, and Dan River High School, we knew two things. We could go to college, or we could go work at Dan River Mills. So, and you know what? We thought working at Dan River Mills was a great opportunity, and for some people who went there to work almost all their lives, it really was a great opportunity. They didn't have to have a lot of education, but they had a great opportunity to still work and be employed. That's more and more difficult. Limited income, limited ability to communicate with people, limited ability to express. So that's why you see oftentimes people expressing themselves inappropriately because they haven't oftentimes learned. This is not everyone, this is just generally. And limited empowerment. They don't feel empowered to change the circumstance. Now, I've been working since I was 9. And my dad grew up on a farm. My dad's a business owner. And he has the pull yourself up by your own bootstraps mentality. And that exists. But some people don't feel empowered to pull themselves up. People that feel empowered do so. This study from Emory also speaks to compounding risk factors and environmental factors. Some compounding risk factors for generational poverty is limited health care, limited educational services. You see, when you think about the income levels of middle income, whether you be black or white, if you go down to Silver Learning Center, which happens to be pretty expensive, you see people of all races there. But they're there to get their children support and help them be better in school. People who live in poverty don't have those options. They don't have those opportunities. And also limited social capital. And what does that look like? That looks like when a child gets sick at school, they just don't come to school. There's not going to the doctor. There's not going to get Sudafed or Benadryl. They're staying at home or coming to school and infecting everyone else. You see emotional and behavioral challenges. So when you're in high poverty communities, what you see are children misbehaving. And what you glean from that is there's something deeper than a child just wants to misbehave. You see mental health issues that are not addressed. You see substance abuse. You see lots of substance abuse. The environmental factors, limited housing options. You see, as low-income housing is decreased, people become more mobile. People go from place to place to place to place. I had a friend who used to rent to Section 8 low-income housing. And he said, Angie, I would see people get put out for $15 a month because they just couldn't manage. They don't feel empowered. You see homes in disrepair. Drive through any neighborhood in some parts of our county, right? This is us. This is Emory out of Atlanta, but this is us, folks, in some neighborhoods. You see limited access. You don't see green space. You don't see parks with kids playing outside. And you see lots of exposure to violence. And folks, what I say is that when we look at these factors, and I see a lot of them in parts of our county here, when we don't address them, I always say they're coming to a neighborhood near you. And so the reality is that we have to work together to have an entire community rise to the level of success by one, taking care and appreciating those students in schools that do well. We're not trying to hate on schools. I love my schools that do well. But we also need to identify those that are not doing well and provide equitable access to these things so that we all rise and lift it up. And there are multiple points of entry because people always want to know, what can I do to help? What can I do? Well, the first thing we can do is acknowledge the challenge. Select any neighborhood. Don't drive your Mercedes through with the windows down now because you'll be mistaken. but go through any neighborhood and just tour the neighborhood. Find a neighborhood not like yours, and maybe like yours, I don't know. But find where children are not being successful. Because the schools reflect the community. So if Kimberly Park and Ashley and schools and Bolton are having challenges, and you all have all looked at the data, I understand, drive through the neighborhood before you try to assess what's going on. Just drive through the neighborhood. And once you drive through the neighborhood, that's when you really get an understanding of we must do something to help all children. Again, not taking away from children, but helping children. So people often ask me, what's the entry point? The entry point starts with acknowledging the challenge, but one of the entry points is after-school programming. You see, you all who are grandparents or parents of children from middle income to upper income, you typically organize your children's schedule to the nth degree. They come home 3:30, you got ball practice, the Bible study, you got something, some social club activity you got woven in there, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever it might be. We organize their schedule. My daughter said to me, Mom, I don't even know, I don't remember going to the mall when I was in high school shopping. I said, that's right, because we did not have all that time just to go out shopping and hanging out and being at the movies and all that kind of stuff. So we were very intentional about organizing your schedule. So when she was offered a chance to play softball in college, she said, I don't think I want to, I want some free time. And of course, we let her have it, okay? And also, we need to look at kids who are suspended. So high suspensions in our district are black males, in this order, black females, Hispanic males, and white males. Those are the 4 categories of students who are suspended most often in our district. Our Hispanic females and white females are good as gold. They really are. They hardly ever rise to the level of suspension. We've got to find places for children to go during the day when they're suspended. Sometimes separation is needed. I was a principal for 17 years, and there were kids that I needed to be away from, and they needed to be away from me. I tell you, because we were just we were battling. You were not going to control my school, and you were not going to disrupt learning. But they needed a positive place to go. We also need Saturday schools. We need communities that have Saturday opportunities for children to access technology, recreation. Children need positive places to go. Because the place that they have right now in lots of parts, and it's not just inner city Winston-Salem, it's everywhere. If we don't give them positive places to go, they find positive affirmation in gangs. And that is nationwide. So we have to take on our children and say, let's have a positive place to go. And we've got to celebrate success, folks. When kids are successful, no matter where they are, we have to celebrate success in church. You know, my church, and I get on the pastor all the time, I fuss with him. I said, you know, if somebody wins a state championship in football or they get a scholarship in athletics, you all are all in, giving them all types. But when someone gets honor roll, you don't even hear about it. So we have to make academics a positive experience for our children. So if you're in an organization, you celebrate those academic achievements. We have to mentor children. We have to mentor them for the long term. And I'm not saying bring them in your home and adopt them and all of that, but going to the school and selecting a few children and investing some time each week to help them understand experiences. And one of the things that I think the Chamber's been working on along with Mayor Joyce has been paid internships for children. Children need to see what they want to be. If I live in certain communities or I live in a home or household where different careers are not represented in the family, many of you and some of you can sit at the kitchen table on Sunday and you have teachers and preachers and engineers and all types of career choices for children. Some children don't see that. It's hard to be what you cannot see. And so bringing the children into the fold and teaching them how to behave and teaching them how to work in an environment is also an entry point. And anytime you have an opportunity, the next one to do, read to little children. Ensure children have access to books, not just when they enter kindergarten. We must ensure that our children are learning from birth to whenever we start them in kindergarten. So many children are starting in kindergarten way behind. You'll notice we changed our registration date to February 20th, which sort of angered some people with kindergarten. But we need to get a handle on children who've never been in school. So we can begin to work with them in March, and from March to August, we have an opportunity to work with children and help them understand what school readiness can be. And again, all this goes on and on and on. But as I said, sometimes you have to go see. Just go as a visitor and ask the principal, may I sit in the kindergarten class? May I sit in the first grade class? And you just have to go from one part of the county to the other to see the variation. And we're all one family in one county, so we should want the same things for all of our children, which is an excellent experience in class. So while this doesn't seem like a lot, it's heavy lifting. It's heavy lifting, but we can only do this as a community. Because as I see, and I've come from the outside, there's nothing here in our district that's different from other communities that have large suburban type areas and then an urban core. It's nothing different. What's different in those communities that meet success is they demand that every child succeed, and they demand excellence from every school because they realize our community is rising on it. It's economic development, it's the right thing to do for children, it's the right thing to do for everyone. So we can't sit on our hands. We know the answers. We know the answers are there. We just have to have the willingness. So I didn't come here again to overwhelm you with the laundry list, but I did want to encourage you to get up and do something. Just do something. Arne Duncan said, when we stop pointing at those children, and we make them our children, that's when we'll see a difference. So I challenge you to be the change that you want to see. Equitable access to for every child should be a community agenda. Mary Lou Cook said that said to a group, and she said in an inspirational speech, again, be the change that you want to see in the world. And I'll leave you with this. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did I see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. So please consider this when you go out of here today. We need to support all children. We need to support all families, because in turn, we support ourselves and our community. We make things better for all. So thank you again for having me today.
Thank you, Dr. Hairston, for your analysis, for your stories, and for your challenge. She left us with good words, but she's actually not leaving us yet. My name's Diane Lipset. I'm a member of the Faith in the City planning team, and I'm happy to help moderate a question period. You may have written a question on an index card. If you would prefer that I read your question so she may answer, wave it in the air, and a member of our team will bring it up for that purpose. If you feel comfortable coming to this side microphone to ask your question, that's fine. If you'd like to ask from your seat, that's harder, but I'll take the time to repeat it into the microphone. I'd ask that you limit the length of your question, be as concise as you're able to be, but don't limit the difficulty of your question. Dr. Hairston has made clear to us she's not afraid of the hard ones. So let us begin this time of dialogue. Questions? So Dr. Hairston, an article from the Annie E. Casey Foundation in December pointed out the success of an African-centric curriculum in raising reading scores. Has there been any consideration of adopting such a curriculum in our 8 struggling schools?
There has been no discussion relative to an Afrocentric curriculum that was mentioned. We have discussed a culturally relevant curriculum that spans the entire district. When we adopt curriculum, we adopt curriculum for an entire district. And so we want that to be relative, meaning that we want children to see themselves, we want children to see their communities and the materials we use, and we want to acknowledge their language and culture when it comes to teaching kids literacy. We actually are working on a literacy structure to implement in the fall, and we know that we feel comfortable that what we're planning, and we'll come back out to the community and share that model, will work for all children.
Thank you. The question says, I understand that 20% of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools students are chronically absent, missing 18 or more days each year. What plans do you have for increasing these students' access to the educational opportunities available at their schools?
So as I mentioned, when we analyzed the absenteeism across the district, we found that so many of our children, as we indicate, believe it or not, right here in our district, do not have access to health care. Our parents cannot take time off to really get them to the doctor and do all of the things that they need to do for children. So one of the areas that we plan to address is the access to care for children in the school. Easton will be, and it's funny, it made me think when I saw your review, Easton will be one of our schools as we renovate, where we bring a lot of those services in-house. There's a concept of wraparound services. I can't name the group because they asked me not to, and every agenda is confidential, so I'll keep it confidential. But the reality is there's a pretty significant group of partners. Some of you are in here. We meet monthly, and that group is working on a very tight system of wraparound services for children, and that includes after-school programming, access to health care, translation for many of our second language learners. Most folks don't realize since 2001, our community has shifted from 5,000 students who are second language learners to 15,000. Our second language learners, our Latinx students, are a third of our student population, and we must connect more to our parents so that they understand what's happening. So there's a tightness there. The other one is suspensions. Suspensions are actually the cause of many of our absences in schools, and so what we're planning to work with, we have PIVAs, which is positive behavior interventions in our schools, but y'all, when you get mad with a kid and they've just done something really bad, the whole positive part it escapes you, it gets out of your head, so we gotta do some work with our teachers.
Thank you. My grandson is taking a Spanish course at Paisley Middle School, and the teachers quit 2 in a row. I understand there's difficulty finding a replacement due to a roster of 300 students. Given our bilingual programs, I presume there are qualified teachers available. Why such a large census?
So I hope I bought some cards. I don't know, maybe I have them. I'm going to pass them out. One of the challenges we have is our teacher pay. Teacher pay is pretty standard at the state level, but the local supplement for us is It's the lowest. It's the lowest of any large urban, we're considered an urban district, of the largest districts. And we hope the quarter-cent sales tax will boost their income between $2,000 and $3,000. But we have teachers who leave us and go right next door to Guilford County for $500 or $600. So we're hoping to stop that revolving door of teachers, and teachers who are bilingual. They're very they're high paid, and they're paid additional dollars. So I think through the new pay structure, if the quarter-cent sales tax does pass, we'll be able to address some of that.
Thank you. We can celebrate the fact that Cook Literacy Model School went from being the lowest performing school in the state to a school with a higher ranking. Could you say a little about that?
That's access to great teachers and a great leader. And oftentimes, at Cook Literacy, really started their school. They have a different calendar, different leader. They have great community partners. So that's a model that we want to use to expand to other schools. Great community partners are able to go in and see, okay, what are the gaps? What can I do to fill in the gap? They're not going in to suggest that we have better parents, they do a better job. They're going in to ask the question, what's needed to close the gap? And they're doing a terrific job with it. And so that's a model we want to replicate. But it's community partnership, it's an energetic leader. And if Paula were here, she can talk a long time. And then great teachers. The teachers are paid some additional dollars to be at that school. So just great leadership, great access to learning, and great partnerships.
Thank you. Can we achieve genuine equity without broad-based diversity within our schools?
Oh, I believe so. I opened Arabian Mountain High School, and I hope I don't step on any toes. My agenda is educating all children at high levels. That's it. All the other things that come with it, I try to let the board members handle that. Educating all children at high levels. And I remember opening Arabian Mountain, and it was a choice school, and we decided not to have any test. No test. You didn't have to have a test to come in. You could just choose to come here and work hard. We accelerated the curriculum. We set expectations in place. We put a Saturday school in place. The children didn't complete their work. They got to sit with me and about 5 teachers and do their work. And they didn't want to do that because they knew that was going to come with picking up paper on the grounds as well. 98% of the children are African Americans, one of the highest performing schools in the state, and lots of national accolades. So what happened, what I realized, and about 60% of the children are free or reduced lunch. What I realized is they had access to AP, tutorial support, but they had also good community partners as well. That school continues to be successful, and so my goal is to be sure, regardless of where you live, what your zip code might be, what your race, ethnicity might be, my goal is to see every single school meet with high levels of success. Equity means giving children what they need, and it doesn't mean taking away from others. It's giving them what they need to be successful, regardless of their zip code or what the makeup of the school might be. So I have belief. I hope you believe as well.
Thank you. Is there a correlation between suspension rates and dropout rates?
Oh, absolutely. When you have a child who is not reading and performing on grade level, and you combine that with suspension, I tell my administrators all the time, that's the magic potion for gang activity and dropout. That is just the magic, that's the makeup. And that's why we all need to be concerned. Because when we're not concerned about a small group of individuals who are killing each other on the streets, when we say, well, that's over there, it's coming to a neighborhood near you folks. And so we have to be concerned about all children and the things that they do. When we put children out on the street and they lose, they're not learning at high levels, the key is to engage them early on, to ensure they have good mentors. I have to brag on our sheriff, and I hope I can take a point of privilege here. I went to North Hills Chris Paul gave tennis shoes to all the kids at North Hills, brand new tennis shoes. And you would believe that children are actually walking around with shoes that are 2 sizes too small. It's just amazing. But he gave every child new tennis shoes. And I went with, because the sheriff arranged for that event. And he has about a group of about 5 kids he mentors there. And he told them, because this is a big event, you don't have to do your homework. And you can imagine how busy he is. So he walks in and the little guy brings him his homework. He's a 5th grader on leadership. What are the characteristics of a leader? And he handed him his homework. And the sheriff said to him, he said, you didn't have to do your homework. He said, but that's okay, I want you to have my homework. That difference he's making with those 5 kids, just 5 kids, will mean a world, because it'll grow. So suspensions, that's the magic potion for gang activity and dropouts, and we have to stop. Now, we can't allow kids to disrupt other kids from learning. We can't do that either. But there are some things that we can do to help all of that.
The school board passed a school equity policy last week. Will the independent committee recommended by the Coalition for Equity in our schools to assist with the implementation and evaluation of this policy be put into existence by the administrative regulation being written?
So there will be an equity advisory, Jim, but let me just say this about equity. Some folks think because you hire an equity officer, which we did, and you write an equity policy, which we got passed, which was huge for our community, then, you know, we'll just be the equity police. Equity is a mindset. It's a mindset. It permeates every aspect of our district. Every aspect of our district. And it's not just for kids, it's also employees. You might have a female doing the same work as a male, and they earn less money by their title. That's an equity issue. You may have a category of employees who earn less money than the category of male employees. That's an equity issue. You may have a child who wants to take AP chemistry, and that AP chemistry course is only offered at 2 schools. Well, what do I do if I'm not at that school? That's an equity issue. You may have a child who needs an after-school program in the arts, but can't get there. That's an equity issue. Everything we do, we have to look at it through the equity lens. And so that's a mindset, that's a shift that not every single board can catch. We went back to 1997, and we actually had equity reports from 97 to 2004. And I had to ask, I said, we've been working on equity since 1997. Are we really about equity? Or are we just about talk? Because if you've worked on equity since 1997, and you're still not where you need to be or close to it, the question is, are we serious? I just need to know before I get fired. I just kind of need to know. So if we're not about it, I don't need to go down that road, but I think we are. I think we are. I think we're ready there, and I think our board is ready. So my point is we will have an advisory, but an advisory can only advise and give you insight. We have to have a cultural shift and a mindset of equity across the district, and I think we're ready to get there.
Several years ago, a large amount of money, maybe as much as $40 million, was raised for the schools by individuals, companies, and foundations. How's that money been used, and what have been the measurable results?
Is that Project Impact?
It does not say.
I think Project Impact, that was a goal. They had not reached that goal of $40 million, and I can tell you, I'm just incredibly impressed. All my friends are so envious. Project Impact is a group of individual entrepreneurs who are serious about literacy and serious about early learning. And so they have funded, and I don't have a number with me, but they funded a number of our pre-K courses or classes for children in some very high-risk neighborhoods. And so that work will yield far more than they have raised. They hold themselves accountable for ensuring that we get children in pre-K and we pay attention to early learning. They're responsible for our kindergarten registration and also some literacy efforts in the district. So that's the just in how it's been used. And I think they have spent about $17 million to date. But it's really an effort that this community should be just proud of. I've never heard of such, but it's a great effort there.
In general, the community does not understand the specific problems associated with underperforming schools, i.e. the shortage of teachers. Can you feed information to the newspaper to publish?
Is the newspaper here? I don't know. Be careful. You know, people Facebook live stream, and when you're speaking to people, you don't always get your verbs and adjectives right. So, you know. I think I will say that in 2001, No Child Left Behind, and I was, you know, an educator before No Child Left Behind, and it's not a history lesson or anything, but 2001, we started to grade schools. We started to have what was called annual yearly progress, and as a result of that, we started to sift and sort schools. This is an A school, this is a B school, and although North Carolina is 11 grades, many states do not. But you knew that you were titled a failing school according to the government. And then once you started to achieve certain points, guess what would happen? The test would change. And so it put you back a little bit. So we sifted and sorted schools until the point where it didn't matter who you were, didn't matter what race. If you had income and you were in a community that was low performing, pretty much people moved out. So I'm not gonna say it was white flight, it was just flight. People just left. And they went to other communities where they felt they could get education, quality education for their children. Can't say I blame anybody, it was just matter of fact. That left us with a lot of schools that were high in numbers of children that were in poverty, basically because they couldn't go anywhere. And a lot of children were in just negative situations. So the legislation required us to take kids who were in non-performing schools and bus them to performing schools. We had to bus them to performing schools. And that angered the community. You know, you're busing 100 kids from these schools to my schools, and this is just not working. So then we had other things come about. So what's happened over time is that high poverty, low income, or low income, high poverty schools did not have that balance of socioeconomic group, that was just off balance, was off to some degree. And what happened from there came pay for performance. So our principals and teachers get incentive pay for growth. And so if you think that you're going to grow more students and get additional dollars and you have a gift, guess what you do? You take your talent to a higher performing school. That leaves lower performing schools with new teachers or teachers who are just there trying to work hard with kids. And so it drained a lot of our schools. And by draining our schools of that talent, it made it more difficult to get the achievement. So I believe in a systems approach, and I believe that things don't happen accidentally. Things happen when systems get broken. People are well-intended. Assessing schools holds us accountable. I believe in accountability. I believe in it. But some of the systems for accountability makes it hard on schools that are low performing. And so, and then neighborhoods go along with it. So that's just the down and dirty truth. And that's just, actually it's the truth from my perspective. But I happen to be in this business before, No Child Left Behind, and after. And again, accountability tends to do that to people. And so we have to really, we have to counter that with some systems on our end.
We have 3 clear substantive questions left.
Okay.
Please talk, all of them have been clear and substantive, by the way. Please talk about the sales tax issue on the March ballot and what it means for teachers.
Again, we lost 500 teachers last year. We'll probably lose about 500 again this year. We have about 30 positions we just cannot fill. this year, so I did ask some of our instructional coaches to teach kids because I felt like the classroom is a priority. So I went to visit, and I visit schools and I do pop-ins, but I went to a school and the little third grader hugged me and said, "Now I hope you're our new substitute." And my heart broke because I thought, oh God, I need to come back and teach this class. Clearly hoping for a new substitute. But they had a substitute since October. And so I can't expect kids to do well. And substitutes are great. They're great now. If you all are substitutes, I'm not hating on the substitutes, they like substitutes. But it's hard when I don't have a credentialed teacher. And then I have several coaches at the county that are certified to teach. So I asked 17 coaches to go out into the schools and teach kids. I said, I love the fact you're coaching, your work is valued, but I need people teaching kids every day. Some of them, I would say 15 of them went willingly. In tears, what can we do? 2, they're still fussing, but teaching kids is what we do. So I feel like those are things that we have to do. We have to get into the classrooms. We have to be intentional about our work.
Could you explain the pros and cons of the mastery learning model IB concept? Is there data to support positive outcomes?
Absolutely. I'm pretty much an IB. I love the International Baccalaureate concept of learning because it's a global approach, infuses cultural awareness. Some people interpret that to be language, and that's fine, but it really forces teachers to integrate learning, to connect learning for children. It's a rigorous approach to teaching children, and I think it's certainly something we want to grow and see grow in our community.
Thank you. Please explain what you mean by community partners. How are they developed?
So community partners, and next year we'll have someone to call other than my office, someone who can kind of grow this. So in a community, again, standing in the gap. Every school has a gap. And then that can be your highest performing schools. They may have a gap. We know that what happens in our highest performing schools, parents tend to close the gap. So parents tend to fill your booster clubs. They tend to do all of the things that need to happen. They can run tutorial programs. They can support the gap. When I was at Arabian Mountain, I had been in Title I schools for many years, so when I went to Arabian Mountain, that was a new experience for me because I had always been a leader of Title I schools. I had so many parents, I told them I'm going to get a parent management plan. They were there to answer the phones when my secretary was out. They were there to run the PTA. They were there to raise money for books. They took the children on the college tours. I was like, oh my Lord, this is heaven. Until they also called me every day, wanted to know when the teacher was going to post grades. So I can tell you, very demanding, but very supportive. I didn't have to take my kids over my spring break to college tours because they took kids on college tours. They did all of those things that they are supposed to do and need to do. But what happens across town in the same community, I cannot get kids on a college campus because people are not organizing them. And so that's the partnership. It's standing in the gap when needed. It's helping with resources. And I have to say, we have, without calling out any big corporate person, we have so many corporate people who are stepping up to the plate, and they give money and say, this is where we want the money to go. So after school programs, keeping kids, if you took a map and said every kid in this half-mile range is gonna have an opportunity to come to my whatever I have and get some program, and get access to the computer, have access to the internet, which many of them don't have. Standing in the gap, folks. It's arranging for youth league. It's ensuring that our kids have activities. It's ensuring they have access to college. Participating in the internship program, bringing children to your job and showing them professional behavior. It's taking time to understand the critical nature of a child's life who doesn't have the support. So that's why we need business partners. That's why we need partners, community partners, to stand in the gap. Is ensuring that children are not missing school because they don't have medical attention. They can't buy the prescriptions that the doctor has written them. They don't have the medical forms to start kindergarten on time. Any of those kinds of access points that you need, but it's not feeling sorry for the children. I don't feel sorry for any child. I empathize and I lift them up, but it's having high expectations and standing in that gap.
You've given us a lot of insight, these clear and focused answers, some challenges, and your time and yourself, and we are really grateful.
More and it won't tax your versus your gas. So if this is an informational piece, I can't say vote for it or against it. All I can do is share information, okay?
Thank you. One more shameless plug. On March 10th, not the first Tuesday, because we don't want to interfere with voting, but on March 10th, we have a fine panel who will present on connecting the dots between Latino families and education. Come back if you can, linger if you'd like to. Thank you for being here.